Click links to join channel here over at SubStars. So Melania and Amazon have got a $40 million movie deal. And then Facebook's with Zuckerberg it came out the other day with a video talking about the need for less censorship and that they had overstepped. So people are kind of have their eyes raised about what is going on with the mainstream media and mainstream social media. And don't get your hopes up, but there is a slight shift in the media, and social media kind of wins. And I'm not quite understanding why that the mainstream media owners and tech companies feel that there's a bigger shift in the currents than I'm seeing. But obviously they probably have their finger on the pulse, I would think, because they have money at risk. But it's not to say that they don't make bad decisions as well. They have stuff like Rings of Power as well. So Amazon is paying $40 million to make a movie about Melania, which is people point out seems a bit high and looks more like Amazon trying to curry favor with the next president, which, yeah, for sure, that's what it is. But every president has a situation like this. Obama had a thing where he had a book deal and he was paid like a crazy amount of money for it. And what happens is the publisher talks to them when they're in office and has him do favors for him while he's in office. And Obama did favors for the publisher, and I forget exactly what he did, but you can check out who published his book. And then when he got out, he wrote the book or had it ghostwritten or had it heavily edited, and he got paid for it. And that's kind of been going around for a long time. It's like, so to get on your high horse when Melania gets a book deal is kind of crazy. So it's current year. The celebrity value of a first lady isn't what it was like back in the Jackie Onassis Kennedy days. That country is long gone. That level of social cohesion is just gone forever. Today, America is a country of strangers who pretty much hate each other and either hate the president or just don't care about him one way or the other. Apathy is kind of the end stage of this American empire because they know that he's not really representing them, which he isn't. Nobody in office except for maybe Ron Paul. So I remember back in the 90s when celebrities were still a big thing. You had Ben Affleck and Brad Pitt and Jennifer Lopez were always on the covers of these magazines. They're the only ones that I remember because Brad Pitt made some fun movies. TV and movie pop culture was something, and it was at a level that will never be reached again, simply because there's too many avenues of distraction. And even the 90s didn't compare to the level of where they were with the 50s and 60s. Back then, stars were stars. Movie and music as well. Like Elvis and the Beatles, that kind of vibe, you're never going to see that again. Not even Taylor Swift had that kind of energy. Because the country was mostly one people, and they were more on the same page, and they had fewer distractions. Even back until pretty recently, we're talking about like the 80s and maybe even early 90s for part of the country. You had a record player, you had a TV, but you didn't necessarily have a bunch of channels. Like it wasn't that long ago where you had maybe a half a dozen channels before cable came to your area, and you still listened to records and tapes and maybe even reel to reel. And the video games were at the level of, at least in the beginning, the Atari 2600. It's like that 40 years ago. Yeah, it does. It wasn't. The technology has advanced so far. It wasn't that long ago. But when you went to a concert back then, it encompassed a larger percentage of, I don't know, kind of your psychological attention span pie chart. When people went to concerts, there were no cell phones. There were just cigarette lighters and joints and whatnot. And it was like you were really there at that concert. You were feeling a groove. And all that is just absolutely gone, which kind of sucks. Even in movies, like why was Star Wars in '77 such a phenomenal hit where people said you have to go see this movie? And then nowadays it's like there's just even Lord of the Rings came out in 2000 or something. That was a huge hit, but it wasn't like '77 Star Wars. Anyway, so the value of celebrities across the board isn't what it used to be. And now this could have been different if in 2016 the media had been more friendly to Melania, who's smart and should have been more of a public figure and would have been useful to people in national emergencies, but the media just wouldn't allow it. So she's kind of went as an underutilized resource because, the media is such vermin. And it's good to see them having their financial troubles as well. You can probably see a shrinking of the media as it goes forward, as people go to alt media. The media would attack Trump when he went to disaster zones, but people need that kind of boost. It doesn't matter if it's left or right. If the president or first lady are out on the scene shaking hands, I remember they got mad at her because she wore high heels to some disaster zone. It's like she was out there talking to people, and you're mad at the footwear. It's like, it just shows them how petty the media is, and that's why a lot of people have dipped out of the mainstream media. It makes people feel like the government hasn't forgotten about them, but the media is controlled by Moloch-worshipping lizard people. They're actually evil, and they played a large part in destroying America. So in 2016, they could have turned Melania into a celebrity, but they just ignored her. Obama's wife was on the cover of every magazine, and when you see her on the cover of fashion magazines, it's just ridiculous. And she was doing interviews with the softest of softball questions, where the reporters were getting out the knee pads to just fluff her off. She can't help the way she looks, but she's not as camera friendly as Melania is. So in Trump's first term, the media was not friendly, which is an understatement. There was some actual mental illness going on where he broke people's brains. And some of those people have never recovered. Even when he was out of office, they ignored Biden to talk about the guy who wasn't in office. That's like pathological. And when Trump was out of office, the mainstream media started to die, which I never thought CNN or MSNBC would start to lose viewers, but they did. And they've sort of been overvalued under Trump because he gave them fuel. And in turn, they helped get him elected. But when Biden came in, they're not going to draw any attention to him because he has dementia. And his VP was just insane word salad every time she took a dick out of her mouth. So the media had nothing to talk about. Even Saturday Night Live was still talking about Trump and the Republicans. People started to realize that the media had nothing to talk about. They weren't news. They were just regime party members. But then Trump was finding his audience in preparation for the next election, and social media was turning out to be way more important than the mainstream media, and this gets more true daily. Because you can look at the last election night, there was a huge shift around away from the mainstream sources to online media, including the alternative media. Odyssey and Rumble had thousands of people on these channels. It was just absolutely maxed out. And the mainstream media learned that was and is the inevitable future. That people are not going to go back to the mainstream media. It's just, if they save themselves by becoming less biased, well, then that would defeat the purpose of what they are. They're just the propaganda arm of Soros Pravda. So then a weird thing happened, and okay, Ratner might have been an odd choice for a director. After Trump won, the mainstream media started trying to do outreach to him because they realized that if they didn't do interviews with Trump, well, someone else would, and that's a huge percentage of the news. Trump has been a polarizing figure, kind of maybe a litmus test, unlike other presidents, though, as someone pointed out, as the demographics change and the country continues to deteriorate, every future president will be the most hated because that's how far apart the left and the right actually are. So the other day, Mr. Lizard Person himself, who's Mark Zuckerberg, who's maybe looking like less of a lizard than he did before, and now he's trying to blame Biden's administration for censoring him. He said people, I don't know, from his office, from someone Biden's office probably, were yelling at the Facebook people for information dealing with the Wu flu, which is good to know that Google's, YouTube, and Facebook, these huge, massive platforms that control the narrative, were allowed themselves to be told what to do by the government when they could have just, told them to piss up a rope. And how much of Zuckerberg is telling the truth or not? I mean, it doesn't matter. He came out and he gave a talk about, and the thing is, the best thing for alt media is when mainstream media censors, because people don't like censorship. So he came out and he gave a little talk about that censorship had gone too far, which nobody expected, but Twitter came along and has been doing very well, and Facebook was losing market share. So they tried Threads, which is, I guess, their version of Twitter, but with more censorship, and it just didn't get a lot of users. They also allegedly had their $15 billion glow ops project, the virtual reality Philip K. Dick dystopian nightmare, got canceled, and Facebook was known as something for the gays and the boomers and the gay boomers. It was kind of getting so boring that the left started leaving Twitter to go to Blue Sky, which rapidly turned into an Epstein echo chamber. So some of the media and quote unquote buzzword of the day, tech bros, it's like when feckless became a thing, are reaching out to Trump, which strikes me as them looking at their declining profits, because people have been leaving the mainstream media and social media and going to alt media because people like free speech. And alt media really took off when they kicked off Trump, so they probably want to start getting people back, and there's a little bit of detrimental reliance going on where, okay, people went to Gab after Twitter kicked off Trump, and Parler and Truth Social, and Mike Lindell's got a thing, Frank's Speech or something, and Getter, and a couple of all these alt platforms totally blew up, and they got a ton more money in advertising. But then Elon comes to Trump and to Twitter, and he gets people back on Twitter, so those alt platforms start to die, and if they start shutting down, then all Twitter has to do is come back with the censorship. And it's like, you relied on this promise of free speech to your detriment. Anyway, so this movie idea comes up, and Disney and Paramount were outbid by Amazon for a movie that, I mean, do people care about a movie on Melania Trump? I don't know, because, I mean, it's possible that there is more interest in Melania than people think, and it might be that people are in the mood for a little American royalty, where also back in the 90s, the royalty there, like, there were fan clubs on both sides of the pond for Princess Diana, who was, good looking. Melania is as well. And so was Jackie Onassis, Kennedy. So there's something to be said for that. And then on another note, the TYT covered this, and on a site with 6 million subs, they got like 300 likes, which is not adding up. And the Washington Post didn't endorse the blowjob queen, and the liberals got their panties all twisted, which Bezos owns, because in their minds, every mainstream media has to be left-wing biased. Like, it's just absurd. And, I remember a red pill for me was a long time ago when I was a teenager, and I saw that the media gave endorsements, and I thought, that's weird. And then I saw that every year they gave endorsements, everything was left-wing. I thought, well, this is just your bias on display. This is bizarre that you kind of have a cell phone like this. And I thought it was weird that not enough people picked up on it. Anyway, Amazon is reaching out to get closer to the president, which is what everyone does, obviously, and there should be interviews and shows about her. I mean, she has been underrepresented, and if Obama and what's his face can get books and movies, so should Trump. And Obama didn't they have a show or something, like a streaming TV show? I don't know how well that did, or a movie about Obama, like anyone cares. But so should the Trump family. And after Amazon destroyed Lord of the Rings with their Rings of Power, which has been an abomination, but I think he's got 3 more seasons left to go. Maybe this will get some eyeballs, and $40 million is really nothing to Amazon. And it's possible that it'll be a hit. It'll probably pay for itself. And more importantly, I suspect that there's more interest in her than... I think they'll probably be surprised by how well it does. Netflix, somebody pointed out, had a hit piece movie against Trump, but I think they're the company that also did Cuties, so we're going to make a movie about an Israeli director and an African producer are going to make this movie set in France, and that always bugged me, because people were going, oh, there's these French, they're so degenerate. I go, no, it's actually Israel and Africa, and then they just got all like, oh, well, what do you have to bring that up for? Well, why do you have to bring up their French? It's like, is one relevant, but the other's not? Anyway, the other thing is, people say Melania is boring and she doesn't need a documentary, but that's because the media refused to cover her. She probably has an interesting backstory. We just don't know anything about it. And if anything else, she's picturesque, and that goes a long way. So they mentioned that her book didn't sell well. It's got kind of an interesting cover. It's black with just Melania in white on the front. because there's like a Book Talk, which is a subsidiary, I think, of TikTok. There's a whole, I don't know what you call it, like a sub community on these book groups who are pushing like coffee table books, and they're mostly garbage. They're left wing books, and it's a huge subculture. And there's another subculture within the subculture of these politically correct political commissars on in these book groups, and they're all women, maybe an honorary gay man thrown in there. And what they do is they go through these books looking for bits of political incorrectness, and then they make TikTok videos and social media videos about them. And so these women have these decent social media followings, and they're making money based on criticizing books for political correctness. It's bizarre, but like it's essentially a modern day witch trial that these women seem to be on board with. Anyway, and in fact, there's one author who canceled her own book because it was I don't know, something in it was politically incorrect, and she just decided to virtue signal by saying that she would cancel it. And then every once in a while there was some book that snuck through the filter where it was a set in the last big conflict overseas, and it was like a romance between a German and some other character, and it portrayed, I don't know, it didn't portray him harshly enough as these virtue signalers would wish for. And I read the synopsis of it, and I'm like, I'm really surprised this made it through the how a left wing woman thought that this would be a story that would sell, but it did sell, and it sold pretty well, and I think people were surprised by it. Anyway, the thing is, a book is not going to connect with people in a way that a video form will, especially women who seem to enjoy royalty and an American version of royalty. And Melania is as good as it gets right now. I don't think anyone comes close to her. And as someone else pointed out, nobody cares about who's that? Doug Emhoff, the husband of what's her? I forget her name. Kamala Harris or Jill Biden. They're just not a whole lot of people are interested in them. Anyway, I did this guy. I kind of felt like Melania kind of got a raw deal, and I was thinking, so did Ron Goldman. Remember him back in O.J. Simpson's days? It's like everyone talked about the wife, and at the time I always thought, there's someone else there who was also, it's like, how bad does his family feel that he just got totally ignored? I always thought that was unfair. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.